Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to vermontitude.com, reformer.com, or BCTV. We come to you from our studios at the Innovation Box on Flat Street. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Today we are joined by freshman senator for Windham County, Nader Hashim. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. So today we're talking the freshman five. All right. So you just completed your first session. First of all, did you enjoy it?
Absolutely. It was a lot, but it goes by super quick. It was really enjoyable to be, right there in the Senate, watching these bills pass through, working in judiciary and working in education and seeing a lot of the priorities pass that a lot of the voters and constituents talked about during the campaign and over the last year.
Right. So you brought up an interesting point, I thought, and we discussed it a little bit because you served in the House first for a term.
Yes.
Yeah. And now the Senate, and the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, there's a lot more difference than I thought there was going to be. And I mean that in a good way. There's pros and cons to serving in either chamber. Right. In the House, you just have a whole lot more people. In the Senate, obviously, you have less. And so as a result, in the Senate, you're able to influence policy a lot more effectively. When you're sitting around a table with just 5 other people instead of 11 other people, you're able to get your ideas into whatever policy that you're discussing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I always say if you want to bring things to a screeching stop, form a large committee around it.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So let's talk about the freshman five. For you, the biggest 5 things that you worked on in your first session.
Sure. So just to add some context, I serve on judiciary in the morning and then education in the afternoon. And senators, we all serve on 2 committees. In the House, you serve on 1. And for me, going into it, you got to strike this balance between, what priorities do I want to bring to the table and what priorities have the constituents voiced that I also need to bring to the table. And so, in judiciary, for me, one of my priorities that I know the community also really wanted to focus on too is the intersection of mental health and the criminal justice system.
Okay.
After the hurricane, we lost the mental health facility in central Vermont, and the responsibility of addressing mental health issues dispersed to local towns, but they didn't get any of the resources to handle that. And what we did, S89 was the bill. It establishes a forensic facility in central Vermont. It was recently signed into law by the governor, and basically it's going back to folks who have acute or severe mental health issues who are also intersecting with the criminal justice system after having committed violent acts. This provides a place for them to be in a secure facility while also getting the mental health resources that they need.
Okay, so that's that was one of the things, and so that's passed. That's in law and being rolled out now.
Yes, the facility should be. It's basically going to be an addition to, I believe it's the Berlin Psychiatric Hospital that, basically they have to, retrofit a wing, add some more security measures to it, but it should be done within the year, which sounds like a long time, but, with the way government works, within a year is actually pretty quick.
Yeah. No, and we had a chance to talk about that. And I often say by the time it hits the headlines, like we find ourselves in damage control.
Yeah.
And the frustration is there are people who have been dealing with it and they don't feel like it's being dealt with fast enough. But there's a checks and balances. There's a reason. There's a rhyme and a reason for all of this. We wish it could be sped up, but maybe you'll work on that in your next session. All right. What else did you do that you take pride in?
Yeah. So the next one would be the shield bills that we worked on. This has to do with protecting reproductive health care and gender affirming care in Vermont, and folks who come to Vermont to access that care, and also protecting the licensure of providers in the state. These bills, one of the main things they do is protect against abusive litigation. Mm-hmm. So, the best way to explain it is to use the example in Texas, where I think the bill that they passed was SB 8, which creates this $10,000 bounty if you report somebody who is getting reproductive health care and getting an abortion or something or anything like that. And, basically what these bills, part of what they will do is say that, if you're coming from Texas to access health care here, we're going to protect your information, and we're also going to protect the doctor's information. And that's really the simplified explanation of what those bills do. But those were really important to me, and I'm glad they passed.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes it's helpful to be a little oversimplistic, right? When we're explaining these things. No, I mean, I think that literally paints a visual. Like, if you come here to get this help, we're going to throw up a wall so nothing can follow you in.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So to me, I think that's brilliant.
Excellent.
All right. I know we worked on more than 5 things, but we had said we would just kind of try to focus on 5 things.
Yeah.
So what's your next thing?
Yeah. So moving into education, quick kind of a funny note. So going into this session, I assumed judiciary was going to be really controversial. We're dealing with guns, drugs, abortions in the morning, controversial stuff. And then I figured, education, we're dealing with kids, we're dealing with schools, it's going to be happy-go-lucky. That was me being naive. Judiciary was actually calm and pleasant.
Right.
Education was the controversial committee. And,
I see that. I completely see that.
And in retrospect, understandably so. We are dealing with people's kids. We're dealing with schools, which are central to every community. And, people are obviously going to be justifiably so very strong in their convictions about how schools should or should not do certain things.
All right.
So that was just one interesting note I wanted to mention. But, one of my priorities going into the education committee was the Universal School Meals Program.
Yes.
And, I remember, during my campaign, I remember thinking, school meals, that sounds good. And then I went to a school and actually, talked to a group of kids and the nutrition program. And I realized, wow, this is a lot more important than people might realize.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids voiced that, some of the reasons that they or their colleagues are struggling is because they just don't have their basic needs met. And, when we're talking about, declining test scores or mental health issues in schools, behavioral issues in schools, you got to take a step back and realize, all right, what's missing from these kids' lives that's causing these test scores to decline or mental health issues? And I think, like we talked about earlier, simplifying it and saying, all right, are they having their basic needs met? And food obviously is a basic need.
Very basic.
And, there was one student who had failed his driver's test a couple of times. And, I think it was on the 3rd or 4th time he took it. The driving instructor who I was chatting with, the driving instructor said, all right, what was different today than all the other times? And the kid said, well, I had breakfast before coming in. And that kind of struck me as, it makes a difference in their lives. So.
I mean, you think about it, in your own terms, as just a person walking around. If you're hungry, like, you're just thinking about, like, I need to eat something.
Exactly.
And you're not focused on anything. So that makes 100% sense. Exactly. So good. I'm glad that one got through. So thank you for that. Yeah. All right. So that's 3. What's 4? All
right. So 4. So this is, shifting towards, what the constituents have voiced very strongly, which is the child care bill.
Yep.
This did not come through judiciary or education, but it's still, something that I really wanted to make sure to support because of how much I heard about it during the campaign and entering the session. I think that after housing, childcare was the second most talked about issue. And I can see why. We passed a very comprehensive childcare bill that was vetoed, and I hope that we are overriding the veto coming up this Tuesday or Wednesday when we go back up for the veto session. But really, the child care bill takes a two-pronged approach to support child care providers so that they can pay their employees a livable wage, so that the child care workers aren't, going somewhere else so that they can get health insurance or, make a better wage. And then the second part of it is making sure that families can actually afford the child care. And so, as I understand it, there's this tiered system as to how families can get subsidies to pay for the child care. And so that's the two-pronged approach for the child care bill. And I'm hopeful that we're going to override the veto this coming week.
All right. So let me ask you a question. So kind of knowing who you are and the ground that you stand on, is it frustrating for you for that bill to come through and not have any part of it because you're not on that committee? Was it like, oh, I really kind of want to have something to say about that?
I don't know if frustrating would be the right word. It's kind of, you got to take a step back and realize you're not going to be able to do every single thing or be the leader on every single thing.
That's fair.
So for example, in judiciary, I'm like, all right, that's been my entire adult life.
Right.
I know my stuff going into judiciary, and education is just an important topic to me.
Right.
And so that's where I have to focus. And then when I come out of those committees, and I have that 25% of free time that I can dedicate to other areas, that's when I start talking to other senators and saying, hey, so what exactly is the policy when it comes to the tiered system for how families will be able to afford childcare? How's this going to look when it gets rolled out? And that's okay. Kind of how the process is. Yeah.
All right. So there we go. Four,
yes. So 5.
Yeah.
We mentioned it a second ago. Housing.
Right.
Without a doubt, housing is
huge.
Probably the top issue that I heard about, coming into this session. Whether it's transitional housing or developing apartment buildings for folks, or providing more opportunities for families to buy a house if they want to.
Sure.
We invested, I believe it's $211 million into the housing bill, and that's being rolled out to. And there's also a number of policy changes that I think are going to be helpful. Allowing for duplexes anywhere that single-family homes are allowed, changing some of the parking requirements for multi-units, so there's a number of policy changes as well beyond just the injection of money that I think are going to allow for more development of housing.
So are we going to be able to get them subsidized so that people can afford to live there?
That's the plan. That's the goal of the bill. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, trust me, I understand. It's a huge question.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like yes or no.
Yeah.
But, even though I'm going to press you for a yes or no answer. All right. So there's your freshman 5. It sounds like you did a lot of good work, but it's not the only work you did.
Yeah.
So just give us a couple of minutes on what else you worked on.
Certainly. So another topic that was also brought up often prior to the session was climate change. Mm-hmm. We're already seeing the effects of climate change. We're seeing our winters becoming different. We're seeing heavier snow, which is causing more trees to come down. As we saw over I don't remember what month it was at this point, but there was one storm recently where we had so many outages that Green Mountain Power was calling for help from other states. I think as far as Kentucky.
Yeah.
That came up to help us.
I had people repairing lines and trees and stuff in front of my house that didn't even speak English.
Yeah.
That's how far that they went. I mean, they were all right. So they were just from Canada, but nonetheless, so it was a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what I really want to focus on is building resiliency, because, the truth of the matter is there's some things that we're not going to be able to backtrack at this point, or backpedal at this point. And, we have to be ready for what the weather is going to be like over the next decade, over the next 2 decades. And that requires, investing in our infrastructure, investing in farmers as well, our local food systems.
Yep.
And, shoring up our waterways to make sure that towns, like Wilmington and Wardsboro aren't getting flooded and cut off from the rest of the world. Regarding farmers, actually, I think one of the most important things regarding climate change is actually investing in local organic farmers. We did allocate $6.9 million to organic dairy farmers. I think that number should be higher. I do think that we should be supporting as many farmers as we can. I'll be the first to say I do not have a green thumb, but I recognize how important our local farmers are, and definitely want to continue investing in them.
Nader, I really want to thank you for jumping on the program. I invite you back anytime that you want to come back to update us. If there's a specific bill that you need a push on, know that you can call us here at Vermontitude, and we'll accommodate you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if I can just quickly add, folks are always able to get in touch with me if they want to. My legislative email is nhashim@leg.state.vt.us. My other personal email account, which you can also email, is naderhashim.vt@gmail.com. And it might take me a couple of days, but I try to get back to every single person. And if you have any concerns or questions, feel free to reach out.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, take care.